How the Fraud Works for Generals. By Anna von Reitz. Information provided to H.E. Cardinal Mamberti and the Vatican Chancery Court in regard to our claims, March 5, 2005, January 19, 2023, in Sikh. When Rome conquered a native people, it first renamed them as a tribe, owing tribute to Rome. Now the conquered nation had a Roman name, just as they renamed Yeshuah and called him Jesus instead. Having a Roman name obligated these conquered nations to pay tribute to Rome. We trust that the name games involved are ringing bells, using new names and foreign languages as the means to attach duties and debts and obligations, is a game that Rome has promoted for centuries. Rome next moved into the conquered territory, and began to build roads, bridges, aqueducts, forts, and other public works for the administration of the new acquisitions. Rome began to teach Latin and Roman history and Roman religious beliefs and Roman social conventions and hierarchies, while not talking in the old native language of the people and not discussing their culture at all. Just like they took all the American history books off the shelves and have been teaching nothing but United States history instead. Next, it built homes and auditoriums and bathhouses and temples and all sorts of buildings that, added to the roads, bridges, aqueducts, and forts, brought Roman customs, language, religion, holidays, and education to the hinterlands. While the Romans asserted their supremacy and superiority in all respects and encouraged the tribesmen to emulate Roman ways as much as possible, they also kept a keen eye out for any new inventions of worthy knowledge the conquered people might have to share. The great genius of the Romans is not the creation of knowledge, but the application of knowledge. Within 2 or 3 generations the tribes thus conquered had largely forgotten who they were and how they lived before the Roman conquest. They considered themselves hybrids, not as lofty as the actual Romans, but proud to be trained in the Roman tradition and happy to have access to Roman infrastructure. In places like Britain, homegrown legions were raised and trained, and tribal princes studied the battles of Rome, Greece, Carthage and Persia, their imaginations captured by the lessons learned, and always, the glory of Rome. And right behind the soldiers, sometimes outrunning them, came the clergy, children, homemaking, and church, solid moral values for tribesmen to follow, a cynical but effective means to keep them in line, predictable, and naive. The same exact methodology is used today, simply updated to fit modern times and technology. The Roman technical gifts and infrastructure improvements are imported along with unique elements of its culture and religious traditions, and before you know it, whatever you were before, you are thinking and acting as a Roman. It's a bit like the Borg in Star Trek. And nobody notices. Well, almost nobody. Rome took over German culture and created the Nazis, whose militaristic prowess and discipline and Superman complex mirrored the modern face of the ancient empire. Mussolini might have seemed like Hitler's second banana, but that is another illusion, a very crafty one. If the effort failed, the Germans would bear the brunt of it. The whole thing, World War II, was engineered by Rome and bears its unmistakable imprint, right down to the swastika from their Aryan homeland in the Indus Valley and the red, black, and white colors of their flags. While they used the blonde blue-eyed northern Germans as their poster boys, it was the dark-haired, tight-skinned Tyroleans and Bavarians and Franconians who got the nod at Hitler's table. The same thing has happened to this country, and it's obvious to anyone who witnessed the transformation from the 1940s to the present and knows the Roman way, that is, the way they take over. Rome, in the form of its municipal enclave in the city of Washington, D.C., has always been a theocracy and the emblems of Rome are everywhere. Swastikas and fasces, the odd bundles of sticks tied together, galore, great stone phallic symbols thrust up in front of the Capitol dome. For anyone who knows anything about the ancient world, it's apparent that we are living in a hybridized Roman world, under the sway of Rome's foreign values and foreign culture, and the leadership of the Romanized political elite is running headlong up against the values of the actual Americans. Here's our prediction. They are setting Trump up as the savior of America after deliberately making Biden into a criminal laughingstock. Millions of Americans will get sucked into the same old shtick, 2 sides to everything. Just remember, it's the same nickel in the end. If Trump gets back in office, it will be a heyday for the military and the economy. Everyone will be so relieved, they won't notice what's going on in China, but we will be fighting the rearguard action to cover the Roman departure. Predictably, the Roman leadership has split things in two, to run its divide-and-conquer strategies more effectively. It has drawn the difference between Donald Trump and his administration versus Joe Biden and his administration in neon lights, inexorably driving the country into Trump's arms at the same time Biden courts China and prepares the next Roman conquest, China. China is in need. It has over 1 billion people and nowhere near the resources it needs. It can't stand alone, and look at the glittering technological superiority that Rome offers. The guilty municipal corporations are colluding just as they did when the Dutch East India Company pulled the Bottomry bond scandal and had to beat feet out of Britain. Then as now, the British are hamming up the Trump versus Biden mock fight, while they are setting this country up to pay for all their fraud and criminality and violence. The EU-backed munis are trying to move to China, where they will benefit China with needed infrastructure and new technology stolen from our patent offices, which they conveniently manage in virtually every country worldwide. Take a look, people. Serco, a municipal corporation, runs the United States Patent Office and serves as paymaster for the United States military. Yes, Rome will help China as a conquered country, a new Roman territory. They will build infrastructure and they will bring technological wonders and advantages, garnered from other people's patent offices, with the help of the British monarchy and the government of Westminster. Rome will also eat China alive, from the inside out, and use the Chinese people as fodder in their games. In a few generations, a culture that has endured for over 5,000 years on its own will be Romanized. With all the good of Rome, comes all the evil. 2. We have seen it before. We don't need to see it again. The money that Rome creates comes from thin air, sex, war, and drugs. Lots of drugs. Its wealth is built on deceit, lies, human misery, blackmail and conflict. It's been this way for 3,000 years. It's always been this way since the Sumerians, Minoans, Egyptians, and Greeks, and the Romans, as usual, learned from these earlier cultures and applied what they learned. The Baalbek, Gnosis, Egyptian, Delphic, and Druidic mysteries were all based on taking hallucinogenic drugs, with viper venom being the all-time favorite. Maybe that spike protein, self-produced viper venom that attaches to the same exact receptor site as nicotine, is making more sense now? And observe, while everyone else chases silver and gold, which are relatively worthless commodities, somewhat akin to paper chits and digital keystrokes, Rome hunkers down and destroys the breadbasket of Europe and blows the Nord Stream pipelines. That's another lesson from Roman history. When the Romans, like parasites, move to a new host country, they destroy as much as possible of the old host as they leave. They poison the water, fluoride, etc., and they poison the soil, chemtrail heavy metals and metallic incendiaries, since 1989, and they set fire to things, like food production facilities and railways and oil refineries. The Romans deliberately poisoned every well and spring they could find as they left Britain, dumping large quantities of iron scrap into the wells. It's still there, for everyone to see, piles of Roman-era slag and iron scrap, still making the water poisonous for the native people, who are all iron intolerant. The pandemic and the injections to pollute our blood and ruin our health are just par for the course and pathetically predictable. Rome has regretted nothing and formed no conscience in 3,000 years. We wish for the people of the world to wake up and see what is going on and pay attention, so that Rome, working hand in hand with its military counterparts in Constantinople and Jerusalem, can't just go on and on and on, generation after generation, singing the same song and dance, playing the same obnoxious, destructive, self-serving, criminal, violent game and making everyone else pay for it. We wish for Rome to be recognized for what it is, and for the Saturnine Brotherhood to be ousted, so that the earth and the rest of the people on it can have peace and prosperity again. We wish for the ecclesiastical law to be upheld and for the lawless municipal corporations to be dealt with, liquidation for most, and forfeiture and transfer of control of the essential services, including Serco, which has caused quite enough trouble and purloined far too much power for itself. We wish for the return of our patents which originated in the United States Patent Office, all of them, including the criminal products and processes which SERCO's patent clerks approved and provided to China under national security wrappers. We remember who we are, even 6 generations after these foreign municipal subcontractors began their fraud schemes in breach of trust and violation of their service contracts. We are still here. And we are still the lawful inheritors. Issued by Anna Maria Riesinger, fiduciary. The United States of America in care of Box 520994 Big Lake, Alaska 99652. April 20, 2023.